Alrighty. So this isn't exactly a demo. This is just going over what you should be putting together for your final submission. Basically a culmination of all you've done so far but cleaned up. First page obviously is going to be your main concept with your color iterations. I've done 4, but you guys only have 3. If you want to do more, that's fine. Just make sure you're doing, like the main one with ground plane, and the others are kind of just floating. They're not as grounded as this one to really reinforce that, you have your main color iteration, and then you have your other iterations here. For your second page, I do recommend that you show both the front and back on the same sheet. Basically just a repetition. And if you do use the same concept as your main, make sure it's placed in the exact same place. So when you transition between the next one, it's not as jarring to suddenly see this one image that was over here, let's say all of a sudden it's over here. Like, no. If you're going to use the same element between two sheets, place them in the same place when it's going to be a sequence of images in your portfolio. In this case, I just decided to do front back like this. A lot of you are going to have different designs than mine. It's not going to fit exactly the same way as mine would, so just keep that in mind. There is the golden triangle that Madison went over in the last class. I recommend that you use that because it's been really helpful for me so far. Obviously you just use the crop tool, go into this, wait no, it wasn't this one. This one here. This symbol right here next to the gear symbol, next to the setting symbol, to your left is going to be all these different modes. It'll give you rule of thirds, the grid, diagonals, all this other stuff. Triangles looks interesting, but so far the golden spiral has been pretty helpful so far. So I recommend that you set it to that. So when you hit C or crop and you click on the image, it'll have this overlay of the golden spiral, golden circle. It hasn't been divided into its thirds. It's just a spiral, but I do recommend that you use this just as a guide for the flow of your overall sheet. It's been really helpful so far. And then obviously don't crop. Now for these callouts, for these special callouts, these are for the business ends of the animal. This isn't an overall animatic study. This isn't an overall gesture study. This is just focusing on the face and the feet, because these are 2 angles that are not evident within the main concept, and these are 2 features of the animal that are very important. A lot of you have already done these things, now you just need to clean them up. A lot of you have them as super sketchy, but you want to clean them up. Just so you can tell what the heck you're looking at. Clear lines, clear silhouettes. Now when you fill it in with whatever tone you're going to use, make sure it's super light and consistent color-wise with the rest of your creature. Yeah, black and white is fine. It's okay, but I think using something derivative of your main concept and really lowering the saturation and lightening it up, I like that a lot better, personally. But black and white will be fine, I guess. Just be careful about black and white that you don't make it so dark that it actually fights contrast in the image. So right now, my main focus is on this guy. This is where the focal point needs to end up. And it starts here and it flows around and comes back to here. But if I made all these other guys super dark, if I made it like a really dark gray, for example, instead of just the derivative colors that I used, all of a sudden you have multiple focal points in multiple places and they're all fighting for attention. That's something that you want to avoid. All that matters in this instance is determining, okay, this is the dark part of the skin, here's the teeth, and I don't need super high contrast to indicate that. It doesn't need to be high contrast for these guys, because you're not painting out every single thing. It's mostly just a further explanation that's already here. And for these guys, this is all callouts, but we're basing it on the same principle. This is our focal point, and then it flows around like this. This is more of a focal point both for value and for detail. This series helps forcibly drive the eye around the page. Otherwise, things would be kind of a mess. It's not as successful of a composition that I'd like, but hey, it is what it is. Now for these callouts, these all fit together because they're not special callouts. They're not callouts of individual things. They're callouts of an overall silhouette, of an overall gesture that's going on with the creature. You can fit all of your callouts onto one page if you don't have a lot of them, but for a lot of you, you have the two wounded modes. A lot of you did 2, which is fine, and then you have your at rest mode. Now, all that I want you guys to do, I did a lot more than what I expect for your guys' final, just because this is for my sheet, but all I expect from you are the wounded states and a rest state. It can be, either or of these, something where it's kind of just hanging out, relaxing, or when it's asleep, but it needs to be at rest, not at alert mode or attack mode. And then obviously your attack sequence, like what would it look like when it's about to attack something. And now the 2 wounded modes is basically just a transition between, okay, it's kind of limping versus it's down. It's about to be taken out kind of thing. So you should have 2 of these. A lot of you do, so that's fine. But yeah, that's just what I expect for the final, is these things. Don't worry about doing extra views of the creature or, doing a young versus old type of thing. That's not what I'm looking for you guys. You can do that in the future if you want, but just not for this final. And obviously, check your spiral to make sure that it's flowing neatly and ending up somewhere. This point of the spiral, something needs to be here. There needs to be something that's taking up this space that's interesting, because otherwise it's just going to feel awkward and empty. So just be careful of that. Make sure you're placing things in interesting ways, something that's following the lead up. Alright, I think that's it. Very short demo, very short blurb. Again, if you guys are not sure about your compositions, you can just send them over to me and I can try and move stuff around if they need it. For your overall backgrounds as well, I didn't mention this before, I don't care about adding a border or a background texture. I don't give a shit. A lot of people will be like, oh, well, you need to add something fancy to it to give it some fancy like project thing, and I'm just like, that's important if you're giving a demo to like an executive and you're trying to pitch a story, but just for this is just about the strength of your design. I don't want you to get into making fancy borders and all that crap. I'd rather you just work on your design and your callouts, because that's the meat and potatoes of your job as a concept artist. Obviously, you're going to have to do graphic design. No matter what field you're going to be getting into, you are going to have to learn graphic design, in the pipeline. But just for this, all I care about is your actual creature work. So that's all I want you to worry about. If you want to add a top-down gradient, that's fine, but I don't want to see any more than that. It needs to be very light and very subtle and unobtrusive, if you are going to add anything fancy to your background or the border or whatever. And obviously make sure you add your text and your copyright, your name and year. This is just a mountain cave boss and indicating what stage it is, and these are just callouts. More callouts. And your iterations. You don't have to actually label them out iterations, but I just did that for myself. But yeah, that's it. So I hope that's helpful. Just a little blurb for this time, and I will see you. I don't know if we're going to have a full class. Probably not, but I'll see you guys on Wednesday just to go over your finals. But yeah, that's it.